I made a video last year, I think, that was about the out of control racism against Indians on social media, but that really focused on Canada because there were recent waves of Indian immigration to Canada on certain visas, and there was loads of racism online directed primarily at Indians. And what they would often frame it as, oh, Canadians can no longer get jobs at like Tim Hortons and stuff like that, quickly became apparent. A lot of it was to do with just like blatant racism. And you can watch that video for yourself and ask yourselves, do these people have questions and grievances with the immigration system, or do they just hate brown people? And you can be the judge of that. So a post on Canadian, which this person says, I'm sick of the environment we've created. Maybe this is because I work in a college in Southern Ontario. Maybe this is because I'm a woman. It could be a number of things. But I absolutely detest the environment we've created. I can't go anywhere and not be bombarded with Hindi and whatever other Indian language is drilling my eardrums. They stand in doorways of groups of 18 to 15 men. They stare at you if you don't wear baggy clothes. I'm currently sitting on a GO train and can't think straight because three massive groups are literally yelling across the train at each other in their own language non-stop. And I've had to move cars already. I feel this way at work. I feel this way is going into Toronto. I feel this way in random towns now. People have approached me at work asking if they can fish the koi on campus. More than once, I'm tired of receiving questions about food banks. There's too many people simply not caring about our way of life and coming here to be disrespectful towards anyone else around them. I'm so tired of putting up with social acceptance when only one side is told to be tolerant. I mourn the multicultural mosaic we used to be. It was beautiful while it lasted. Out of all the countries to import people, why did they import Indians of all? Because there's an endless supply of them, and they're accustomed to living the standards of farm animals. Who better to cope with Canada's declining quality of life? Literally the worst choice. Korean, Ukrainian, South American, so many other cultures worked well. But what has happened since I released that video is racism against Indians online has got even more insane. And I think that's because it's been picked up as a more of a political cause by the American far right. And this video is about that, but it's also about the American far right, which is constantly defended by people like JD Vance. They're the ones leading this, but they're also doing it against South Asian political figures who are on their side, like Kash Patel, the director of the CIA. And I think this just goes to show that even though we're entering an age in like global fascism and white supremacy, where there is a degree of tolerance for non-white faces in the leadership of these movements, at the end of the day, if these South Asians or black leaders in conservative movements in Western countries think they're actually ever going to be accepted and think they're actually safe from the policies and the culture they're creating by whipping up this far-right rhetoric and xenophobic rhetoric and also just introducing policies that help the far right, they've got a surprise coming. We've seen this in the UK to some degree as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that before getting into the main bit of the video. But it just goes to show that, like, for people who are in any minority that is traditionally hated by white supremacists, just because they accept you to a degree in their movement doesn't mean they actually will accept you forever, especially when they gain total power, because they don't actually want you. They don't accept you. They think your religious views, they think your culture is backwards, and they would love to get rid of you. They would love to deport you. And you see that more and more in the language of both British conservatives and American conservatives about just deporting anyone, basically, who doesn't align with their Western white supremacist views. So all of that coming up for you today. But before we go any further, if you like my video after you've watched it, please either like, maybe subscribe to the channel. And also, if you want to support my work, please check out my Patreon page and check out my YouTube memberships. And if you want to follow me on social media, please follow me at The Cavernacle on Blue Sky and also on my Instagram page. So anti-Indian hate has been ramping up in like most Western countries, I'd say, but it's also a weird one for someone like myself, and I spoke about this way more in the other video. Growing up in a part of London that is very South Asian and having like Indian and South Asian friends and having people I know who are from South Asian families, there is a degree of acceptance in British society, which is a very racist society, for Indian people, especially Indian Hindus and Sikhs. And that's because, in terms of just who we've decided that we're going to demonize the most in the UK, it happens to be Muslims. And it could be Muslims from a South Asian background, but not exclusively. And I guess what you can see the hatred for Indians in America and Canada is that's their version of hating Muslims. Because yes, they hate Muslims as well, but because Muslim populations generally are smaller in Canada and America, they focus their hatred more on Indians, because it isn't really about, hatred of a religion or hatred of a specific country. It's hatred of non-white people. And that's why it's insane in the UK when you see South Asians who might be Hindu really whipping up racism and xenophobia against Muslims, thinking that white supremacists in England actually make a distinction between Pakistani and Indian Muslims and Indian Hindus. They definitely don't, but at the moment, Indian Hindus are generally a bit more accepted by racist societies. But we can't talk about whipping up racism against Indian people and people from South Asian backgrounds without talking about Zoran Mamdani. And of course, before we get into the Conservatives, I just want to talk about this in terms of the climate in America right now. People have gone absolutely berserk because there's been pictures of Zoran eating rice with his hands. And it's just such like a knee-jerk racist reaction from conservatives in America, because they don't even stop to think about like how we in Western countries have also been raised to eat many, many things with our hands. So what is the actual difference between eating a sandwich, pizza, crisps, fries with our hands and eating rice? The only difference is you've been raised to see one as okay and one as not okay. But what they think when they see this, and the reaction has been, oh my God, Zoran Mamdani is so unhygienic. He's backwards. Like, this culture is so backwards. They're eating rice with their hands. Like, it's the most scandalous thing ever. And you see this, and here's a post of him doing it. Is he eating with his hands? Gross, beyond gross. Bhaskar Sankara writing back, it's actually really easy to eat rice with your hands. People act like this is some barbaric ritual when it's just basic table dexterity for 1 billion or 2 people a day. People underneath saying, but why didn't your culture create eating utensils? And then someone just tweeting at him, actually, you're going back, right? So anyone defending eating rice with your hands has to be deported, according to the American far right. And it's just so insane. Like, even that Sydney Watson, who is a far right Australian, saying that, like, oh, you come from a culture that didn't invent eating utensils. Okay, if we use your logic, you come from a white settler culture that does use eating utensils. So why do you eat so much shit with your hands then? If you're so much better than all those barbarians in other countries who eat with their hands, why do you still eat with your hands? Like, most people eat with their hands every single day, no matter what country they live in. You having a problem because it's specifically rice, because it looks different to you, it just shows you're just such a fucking racist. I don't understand the logic that it's okay when it's burritos, tacos, pizza, French fries, crisps, but when it comes to rice, which people eat with their hands anyway, I've seen so many people eat sushi with their hands in the UK, it's pretty common. You draw the line because there isn't a barrier of seaweed between the rice and your hands. Again, absolutely insane, but that is what we're dealing with right now. They're attacking candidate for office with a South Asian background just because he is doing something that is very common in his culture, is probably very common for most people in the world to eat rice that way, and is also the most common thing among humans to eat with their hands. And they're just so racist they can't help themselves. But now let's move on to conservatives a bit more. And hatred for Indians amongst American conservatives has just been going insane lately. And a lot of this has to do with similar rhetoric you see in Canada. Because you probably remember, Elon Musk was saying he would die on the hill of defending the H-1B visa, which has enabled people from around the globe, but also lots of Indian people, come to America and work for big tech companies. And the dystopian part of why people like Elon Musk like this system is because they like having that power and control over their workforce. If you remember, when he took over Twitter, there were loads of people who lost their jobs at Twitter who were on these visas, and when they lost them, they had to either find work very quickly or they would have to leave America. And it gives him that power to just exploit these people even further and pay these people even less. But it's fair to say that most American workers are not losing out their jobs to Indian migrants on H-1B visas. This is just something they have recently clung to, probably because they've been affected by the discourse in America. So that has drove a lot of the racism and xenophobia, that, typical anti-immigrant rhetoric. They're coming to my country and they are taking good old-fashioned American jobs. And in that culture as well, we see pages like this, which have verified ticks, which is India taking L's. Now, it seems to be this account is an American conservative one. I wouldn't put it past it to actually be like a foreign account. We see with a lot of the biggest Israeli accounts or pro-Israeli accounts, they're actually run by Indian people. And in this case, could this be run by a Pakistani person or someone from a country that hates India that isn't America? Perhaps, but it is primarily focusing on like American hatred of Indians. And if you go through the post, it just has loads of shit that plays into loads of stereotypes about Indians being dirty, unhygienic. That is the stuff that basically fueled the Zohran Mamdani rice scandal. You see all these posts saying shit like this. Indians expect the world to treat them well enough, though the only experience hundreds of millions of people have with Indians is someone calling them to scam them out of money. Just like blatant racism. I mean, what is more common for Westerners? To have an experience with South Asians and Indians through either growing up alongside them or, let's say, a very common one, eating at an Indian restaurant, so interacting with Indian culture that way, or being scammed by someone phoning them from India. I don't know about you, but I think the restaurant example is way more common. Just saying loads of other shit like there are way too many Indians in India. Just going full mask off. Indians brought their top 0.01% talent to America, and almost 5% of that 0.01% elite human capital is on food stamps. In contrast, Operation Paperclip did the same thing with Germans, but instead of truck driving accidents and food stamps, America went to the moon. So yeah, Nazi war criminals, good. Indian migrants working for Apple and Tesla, bad, because a really small minority of them have food stamps. But yeah, you have loads of accounts like this, like just posting nonstop anti-Indian propaganda. So Codex India, exposing the unfiltered reality of India to the world. So Italian American explains why a customer left his pizza shop very angry. So foreign customer walks into a pizzeria and demands free shit and then throws a hissy fit when the restaurant charges him extra. A reader tells me that the customer is likely Indian, so doesn't know where this person is from, and then goes on to say, Indians are notoriously cheap, demand free shit, then flip out when they have to pay. So again, this stuff is just absolutely so normal on places like Twitter now. There's another one called Crime Reports India. And also, let me say, all these accounts are being paid for these posts. Like, the incentive to post this shit is to make money. And instead of actually reporting on crimes that might be happening in India, it just has stuff like this. Canadian rivers and lakes turning into bathrooms because there's South Asian people swimming in a Canadian river or something. White Canadians have never swam in a river or a lake, ever. It's only Indian people who do this. So yeah, not many crimes being reported on Report Crimes India, but that is just like the online context of all of these conservatives just feeling completely okay with being insanely racist to Indians. And now let's move on to what I was saying about the UK example. So like with the UK, but probably not as much, you have visible South Asians in the American far right and also the American government. And probably the most powerful among them is Kash Patel, who was an absolute conspiracy nut job, like podcaster and YouTube host, before becoming the head of the FBI. So yeah, he is a terrible guy, a terrible fascist as well. But let's see how American conservatives like him. So happy Diwali, celebrating the festival of lights around the world as good triumphs over evil. So pretty standard Diwali post there. The top reply, get the fuck out of my country. Another one, no, America is a Christian nation. Sir, please don't promote the festival of foreign gods in America. Christ is king. I've seen that one. Is that the festival where they all shit in the street? This is America. We don't do this. Go back to India. Good triumphed over evil when Jesus died on the cross. Get your pagan nonsense out of here. So another prominent conservative, is he like some sort of pastor or some shit? Go back home and worship your sand demons. Get out of my country. So that is what you're getting for selling your soul to the American far right if you are South Asian, primarily Indian. You can't even express happiness about your own religious festival without American conservatives who, yes, support Donald Trump, telling you that you should go back to your country and racially abusing you. But again, these people don't care. They think they'll be accepted. Kash Patel has clearly, obviously, sold out to white supremacy, and he's become a part of it, and he thinks he will never become a target of it. And these people help create this hysterical climate that does target groups like Indian migrants and stuff like that, thinking it won't ever hurt them as well. But it clearly will at some point. And another person who's absolutely shameless, although not South Asian, is JD Vance. Now, JD Vance is married to an Indian woman, and even he said this recently. JD Vance says he's raising his children Christian and he hopes his agnostic wife, Usha, comes around to the Christian faith. Vance's 8-year-old did his first communion about a year ago and his 2 oldest kids go to a Christian school. Most Sundays she comes with me to church. Do I hope eventually she is moved by the same thing I was moved by? Yes, I honestly do wish that. I believe in the Christian gospel and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it that way. Now, obviously JD Vance is an absolutely terrible fucking person, but him even saying that he hopes his wife will convert to Christianity publicly, I think is all about political posturing in terms of he knows that American conservatives won't accept his wife. So he's, especially if she isn't a Christian, so he's saying, well, I hope she becomes a Christian. And I bet if JD Vance becomes the nominee for president next, his wife will convert to Christianity. And a lot of people were saying he's really disrespecting his wife and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I don't think she is unaware of what he's doing. I don't think they haven't had conversations about this as well, about how he would probably have to do this to help with his political career. It wouldn't be the most crazy thing. But again, he just gets loads of abuse on Twitter and how they can't trust him because he's married to an Indian and because he's gone to places like India while being vice president. And that is the state of American conservatism in regards to just Indians generally. You can see the vice president squirming. And also, this is the same vice president who, when it leaked that a youth group of people in the GOP, including people who worked for GOP politicians, were all talking about how much they love Hitler, he was defending them. So he's not someone who's a moderating voice in the Republican Party, trying to stop this crazed white supremacy from completely taking over. This actual Nazi shit, right? He is defending people who say this stuff while having an Indian wife who they are racist against as well and who they will never, ever accept. But again, it shows you how shameless these politicians are. And it's just a depressing state of the world. I feel like this issue specifically isn't getting loads of coverage, but it is depressing to see. And I would just say to anyone who thinks rising hatred against Indians won't affect everyone, you have another thing coming because it's always one scapegoat. And I've said in the UK, it's more focused on Muslims. In the US, it appears to be Indians. But I know obviously loads of Indians and Muslims don't have good opinions of each other and actually probably hate each other more than white people hate both groups. But at the same time, they have to realize that if you're living as a minority in this country, the racists and conservatives that you might ideologically align with don't view you as one of them. And just because you say you also hate Muslims, for example, like a lot of South Asian conservatives do in the UK, doesn't mean they're going to accept you because they don't like all of you. And you would hope for a lot of them that would be a waking up point that you shouldn't believe in a conservative ideology, especially in a Western country, because it's going to backfire massively. Just look at Kash Patel. He's become the director of the FBI and they're still racially abusing him on Twitter. People like Steve Bannon love that book. I think it's called Camp of the Saints, which is about Indian migrants taking over Europe or something like that. That informs why he hates the H-1B visa stuff, because he was massive against it. He absolutely hates Elon Musk because of this. So I actually do expect this to get even worse. And you do see this with the visa debates generally. But that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.